Welcome back, guys. This is just like one of those stream of consciousness shows. Like, we don't come on with any plan. Usually, it's always me and Dr. Fynan here. And so, Michelle, you were just talking about falling, and I was sharing that I'm a professional faller.
Mm-hmm.
You started mentioning the subconscious mind and the way we think about falling or whatever. You're about to dive into this, and we're going to dive into some deep stuff here, people.
Yeah, so yeah, as per usual, it's like, hey, how was your day? We're like 2 seconds into it, and I'm like, well, this leads us exactly where we need to be. So maybe a little backstory would be helpful about why you are a professional faller, and then I can share my experience with falling, and we'll go
Yeah.
from there.
100%. So, backstory for anybody who's listening and doesn't know, I was born with cerebral palsy. It's a brain injury that leads to a lot of issues when it comes to balance and motor skills. And so, because of that, I became friends with the ground a lot. Um, Probably at one point, it was probably my best friend because I would just meet it so often. We knew each other well. And so, because I often fell, I became really, really good at it, especially when I was a young kid. I could fall and probably, if you weren't paying attention and you didn't see it happen, you would never know
You
that
just
I,
like get back up again
yeah.
so
And,
quickly.
and people, like even 10 years ago, I would be going to work meetings and stuff, and I would just trip and fall, and then other people would be in front of me. They had no clue. I was like,
They're
"Yeah,
like,
I'm good. I'm all right. I just know how to do it."
which is such a beautiful thing because we can then like take that and say that it has trickled over in like or it can be applied rather like about just getting back up again and how the more you fail, if you allow yourself to learn from it and to apply that strategy, then you can get back up so much quicker. So
Oh,
it's funny though, the way you describe the ground. That's how I describe my relationship to the ground because I'm so short. I'm like the ground and I were very close friends, literally. And I'm short because I have osteogenesis imperfecta, which is a brittle bone disease. So I, on the other hand, have a big fear of falling and avoid it at all costs. And I was sharing with Nathan, both of my girls have OI as well. One is 7 and the other is just about to turn 4, and both of them took a tumble yesterday, and amazingly enough they were both fine. But because I'm seeing this experience happen before me and the type of falling that is occurring, it looks really bad to me because I wouldn't have like come out of that experience unscathed. In my experience, that would have been like a nice little femur fracture. That's what we're going to be dealing with. So it's been kind of traumatic to say the least to be seeing that. And like even the next day, I feel my nervous system is still pretty shot. It's still kind of shot just from visualizing that and seeing it and knowing what could have been. Um, but I digress. That brings us
oh yeah,
to,
that's not a digression at all.
yeah.
That made me think of how many times people think about their relationship and they play out the whole relationship
Yeah.
before they ever say, "Hey, my name's Nathan. What's your name?"
Yeah. You're playing out your past experiences and they're feeling like reality because your body is telling you, "Oh, I remember this. This is like we need to be on high alert." because this is going to be extremely painful and traumatic, what's about to go down. When in reality, our day did not change yesterday, other than like hanging out and like just making sure that she was fine, which she is. Both of them are fine. And here I am still like, oh, Jack Daniels for dinner tonight. Like, and like that's where my head goes. But now I know because of just studying this, um, that it doesn't have to be where my head goes and stays. Like if it can go there because I can't delete all of my experiences. I can't delete the lens that I see the world through, but I can be like, oh, it's getting a little foggy again. Let me wipe it off and see a little bit clearly and breathe through it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and you have such a great mirror for that through your kids.
a great mirror. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As we talk about a lot of times, like all this stuff, usually when it comes up, it's being mirrored through someone else. Um,
Mhm.
and that's our opportunity to learn about ourselves and what quote triggers us from what we see from somebody else is really ultimately about you,
Mhm.
yourself, what's happening within me that's creating this. um yeah, and so we got a couple of questions from some people, and
Mhm.
they're around the same kind of topic, and I'll pull up one that we got from on Instagram. And that question was, let's see, guys, will I be able to find it? That's the question.
Well,
Okay.
while you're digging, oh, did you find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. How and when to bring up disability, which includes severe allergies that can kill. So how do
Mm.
we how do we self-disclose our disabilities? And just so you know, for me, every time, like, there's no, I'm not getting away with hiding that there's something different about me. So uh, it's out there, forefront,
Mhm.
and it's like, yeah, this is usually I get the question like in normal life situations. They'll be like, what's wrong with you?
What
Or
is wrong with you, Nathan?
there's a lot that's wrong with me, okay?
What
Um, they'll say, "What's wrong with you?" or "What happened to you?"
happened? Yep.
Yep, and
I
it's
know that
like
one.
nothing happened.
Yeah. Just
I was born,
I was born. Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
what happened.
Yeah.
Um, so, but I'm assuming from the question that there's a lot, obviously allergies, definitely invisible.
Hmm.
But if they could kill you, I'd say
That's
that's
important to share.
pretty important, depending on what you are about to go do with this person.
Yeah. Uh, and I can appreciate that because there is a level of like privilege of not having to share, um, when it comes to some disabilities when they're not like immediately visible, like allergies would be for myself. There were times when I'm like, I'm able to hide it. I could bring it up when I want and if I want to and if I don't want to. But at some point, there's literally for me the breaking point where at some point it is now a risk to me if I'm not sharing it.
Michelle, why is your arm hanging way over here?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And you learn that by not disclosing and then having, friends that'll just run up and bear hug you and then you break a rib and then you learn like, was it worth me just like hiding out and not sharing this with someone? And And that risk versus that need for keeping it to myself has changed, over time. Now I'm like, first of all, I don't have the energy to hide anything anymore. So there's that. I just don't have the energy to not be myself anymore because it's exhausting. And I didn't realize just how exhausting that performing was until I kind of started letting go of it a little bit. And everyone's on a different space on that continuum. But when it comes to this like allergy that is deadly, that priority is like, okay, well, how important do I view my life?
Yeah.
And that was actually what I was asking myself at times, like, how important is my safety to me? And when I wasn't feeling great about myself, I would kind of put it on the back burner, to be honest. And that plays out sometimes. And you don't realize that that's what's happening. But looking back, I could see that as a thing.
Well, and even as you said that, like that's not even just a disability thing. I think that question is
Boom.
like
Yeah.
it's a human thing. How important is my safety to me right now? And I
Right.
think that's something that we at least in my experience, I don't remember people telling me about like talking about safety, right? When dealing with relationships
Hmm.
of any kind, just having friendships, like the importance of safety and what that actually does for you in relationships, and it's
Mm.
not
Yeah.
really talked about. And our that idea, that gut instinct,
Mm.
too, it's so
Huge.
important,
Yeah.
and it's a real thing.
Yeah. So, safety, my safety, as someone with a bone disease that has sneezed and broken ribs, tripped and broken femurs, safety is like the lens through which I see everything. So, I need, like, survival wise, to be very in touch with my gut. And I've learned to trust the little hairs that stand up on the back of my neck when I see someone down the road. Like my little bubble here is pretty big. Like if you enter the bubble, that honestly, the boundary is like way, way, way over there. I'm already aware of your presence, you know? So some people are not that aware because they don't have to be, but that's
Yeah,
where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
yeah.
And I can I teach that essentially to people because I think until you have experiences in your life where your safety is threatened, maybe it's not on your radar. Like you just said, no one ever really taught that to me. And the other side of that coin is when you enter relationships and you don't feel safe, then intimacy is affected.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and that's big time what I like to talk about too. So, okay, when it comes to disability disclosure, let's kind of circle back to that. We're looking at like, do you feel safe? Do you have to share it with everyone? No, you don't. You don't. Um,
I wish I could remember, because for those of you who might be joining for the first time, we used to be hot and heavy over on Clubhouse. And
I
we
like
talked
it.
about this very question. We talked about it multiple times, but there was something somebody said about disclosure, and I totally wish I remembered how they defined it,
I
because it
remember
is,
that talk.
yeah, but it's the gist of it. I'm not doing it justice, just so we're clear. Um, and if the person who said this is listening, make sure and put a comment so that we get it right, because I think it's that important. But it was the gist of like, it's on a need to know basis. And right
Hmm.
now, you don't need to know.
Hmm.
So, who needs to know what is the question to start asking
Right.
yourself. And who can you tell that if you tell them, you don't feel like it's going to come back and bite you in the
Hmm.
ass for telling them that.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's hard to even discuss, it's hard to discuss this in black and white because some people would say, well, if you're not owning your disability, then, you're disowning it. And I don't believe that's true.
Yeah.
I think that we're all, you're going to be in a different space with it, and that might shift depending on the day, depending upon how you're feeling, depending upon the person that you're trying to connect with. But when it comes to dating, especially when we're considering disability, that like this person who wrote in was sharing, it's a deadly response um, to an allergy. Like, how soon do I share that? And I'm expecting that this question is maybe coming from a space of, I don't want to be too much right out the gate. I don't like how I don't want to be too much. And I say that because someone yesterday was sharing, I feel like I'm too much. I don't want to date because there's a lot of help that I need. And I think that's a common one in our community as well.
Well, and what is that really saying? It's saying I'm gonna make this decision for you. The
Hmm.
other I'm not even giving you the opportunity to make the decision on if this is too much for you. Like,
Yeah.
because yeah, that's a reality. Some of the stuff that people with disabilities deal with through no fault of their own, just through circumstance, can be seen as a lot. And who wants that person anyway in their life if that's where they're coming from?
Hmm.
Um, but how often are you stopping yourself short and creating their answer for them without allowing them the space to maybe give you a different answer?
Sure. And and again, and we mention this a lot, this is a human experience because I would say many of my clients right now actually don't have disabilities. So the majority are people who are not disabled, but the story that we tell ourselves is the same. I'm too much. I have too much baggage that I will never talk about because I don't want anybody to know. It's the same thing. And I think maybe for people with disabilities, we feel like there could be like hard evidence. It's like, well, I really can't actually do that thing over there. Like physically, I cannot do it. But how much are you going to be present for a partner who maybe is carrying baggage over here and you're able to carry that while they make dinner because you physically can't right now, you know? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything. Like, let's just be clear on that, first of all.
And if you're just joining us for the first time here, that's often our answer for a lot of things. We don't know. We're just having a conversation, and maybe this conversation leads to some aha moments for us and for you as a listener or viewer, whatever,
Hmm.
however you're consuming this. But so many good questions, and even asking that question, like how many people think about allergies either. um and so I know you had gotten a question as well, or
Hmm.
maybe a couple of questions. So what was on that person's mind?
Well, I shared a little bit about one of them right now where someone had said, how do I how do I get past this thought of being too much, you know? And it's interesting because I think sometimes in one arena, it's very clear um, that we're just telling ourselves a story, like, and For example, maybe I'll use myself as an example. Maybe you're a therapist and you are fantastic at supporting people in setting boundaries, for example, Nathan.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and it's very clear when someone is sharing that they're struggling with this, and it's very clear to you on how you can help them. But then when that thing happens to you, you fall into old habits sometimes. So even though that like clarity is there, it's hard when you're shifting things in your own life. And that's why people reach out. So then how do we shift this feeling? So my suggestion to her was, well, over here, you don't have that tape playing, and you're able to sit here and support people in seeing the ability and
Exquisite boundaries.
exquisite boundaries. You're able to support people in seeing the ability instead of their disability, right? Let's say that's what this person was, that's their zone of genius, helping other people see where there's so much ability there as opposed to disability. But then when it comes to relationship, feeling like, but disability here in this lens is too much. I'm too much. So it's about taking that lens, putting it over here, and really seeing the story for what it is then, because we're able to then list all the reasons why we are too much. Why don't we switch and find the ability? So what are you able to do? What do you provide in a relationship? And if we look at those things, the way we feel about ourselves going into a relationship is totally different than if we're just looking at disability.
And so sometimes I think that too is then like not asking yourself the question. Don't ask yourself, what do I bring to this? Find the relationships that you are in and ask them what you bring to the table, because like you talked about wiping off
Mm-hmm.
the mirror, like you can't see you. You can't see how other people view you. So sometimes it is about looking to those other people and saying, hey, what makes us such good friends? Why do you enjoy spending time with me? And there's somebody who does this exercise, but it's asking it in multiple times, because when you ask the first time, it's probably like, I don't know, I just do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so you have to dig a little bit to get the answer, but I think it's um don't rely on yourself, because it's so much easier. Like one of the hardest questions to ever answer sometimes is like the question of what are 5 things you love about you? And
Mm-hmm.
then you get down, you're like, okay, give me two. What are two? But if you go and you talk about all the things that don't work, your brain is wired to be like, oh yeah, boom, 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 boom. You got a list of 100 things. And in reality, there's probably 100 things that are lovable about you too. You just can't see it.
Mm-hmm. That was a big one for me. I'll say it still kind of is, um, with feeling like I had to come up with the answers myself and not recognizing like that I can't see what I can't see. And just the benefit of getting that other perspective from someone else. Sometimes we lie and say, well, like if you can't see it, then it's not there. But that's 100% not true. And I think that speaks to why coaches need coaches, therapists need therapists,
Yeah.
because if I'm sitting there trying to therapize myself, I'm missing a lot. I'm missing a lot. And there's a quote that has always kind of reminded me to like ask for help. And that was like, even the most skilled heart surgeon can't do their own heart surgery. And I was like, oh, okay. That doesn't negate that the heart surgeon's not like that they're skilled. Okay.
Yeah, that they know
Because
what they're doing.
yeah, they still know what they're doing. They're still a fantastic heart surgeon, but they literally could not do surgery on themselves. Okay, Michelle, you could get a little bit of support here. So I don't know if that helps anybody else, but
Yeah, no, I hope that it does. I think that it would. And again, this also goes back to that safety. Uh,
mm-hmm.
find the people that you feel safe with to ask these questions. Don't just go ask anybody.
Right.
Find the people that are relationships that you want to have more. You want to have more relationships like the one that you have with this person.
Yeah.
When you were telling the story, what I was thinking about was the gym for me. Like it's like, okay, I can create massive results in this area. So, what are the skills that allowed me to do that? And how do they transfer into other areas of my
Yeah.
life? So, like, one, regardless of what area of life it is, I had to show up.
Yeah.
Uh,
Consistently.
yeah, like at one point, I was going 6 days a week.
Mm.
Um, and it was like automatic.
Mhm.
Wasn't even thinking about it. I was just like, oh, it's time to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Um, Two, so I had to show up. I had to do hard shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime that I've done anything that I've been proud of, it's been hard. And yet, how many of us who are listening or watching, and probably at points for sure, even myself, that's the thing that we avoid doing for the thing
Mm.
that we really want because of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, man, right now, this is too hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this right now.
Yeah. So at one point, that story for me was dating.
Hmm.
It was putting myself out there. It was being vulnerable and showing up as myself with the potential for rejection because I'm too much and nobody's gonna want this. And oh my gosh, the competition. Why would someone, there were so many stories, but the same thing needed to be applied. I had to show up. That
Hmm.
was literally the only way that I could meet someone was either showing up online or showing up in person in some way. I had to be present. The other thing was consistent. I had to show up consistently. I couldn't just go on a dating app one time. Or, well, I paid for it for 1 month and that's all I'm going to do. I hear that a lot.
Oh,
So then there's a time limit. And then that's added pressure that we're then putting on ourselves, on these other people that don't, the connection doesn't even
yeah.
exist yet. And we're already like giving it a time limit. Okay.
And they
So,
don't even know that
yeah.
that's a thing that's happening.
Yeah. So I had to then do hard stuff. I had to talk to people. I had to share about myself. I had to discuss my disability. I had to, oh, I also then had to learn what do I like because then they're asking me what I like. Got to know that. So it's it's the same. So for those who are really rocking the gym habit right now, what can you take there and apply it to dating? Or for those who are like rocking out on this dating life right now, what can you take from that and apply to building your new business? Because it's the same formula, just with little tweaks.
And you know what? I love when we talk all the time. But here's the story that I actually thought of as you were talking. How many people who are listening are amazing advocates,
Oh, yeah.
right? So that completely applies to dating for sure. Take what makes you a badass advocate and like put that back on that part of life.
Hmm.
And I think that will change how you show up. Like, yeah, you when you go advocate, you have to talk about hard stuff all the time. You have to share your story. You're sharing your story in a compelling way. Hey, guess what? That's what relationship
Bang,
is.
bang. Yeah.
Yeah. So you already have the skills
Hmm.
actually required to do this. Maybe this is the first time anybody's ever said it in this way. And it's like, okay, how do I become an advocate for my relationship, my dating
Hmm.
life?
For myself as someone who is wanting that,
Yeah.
which brings me to this other question that was sent to me. And I think it ties in really well. I met someone that I'd really like to get to know this past weekend, connected with her on Facebook. My usual pattern would be to immediately initiate conversation, but I kind of hesitated this time because cold calls rarely work out for me, you know? So is there an approach or a tactic that might work better? I've noticed that all lasting friendships seem to happen organically. They aren't planned, they aren't forced.
So much good stuff
I
in
love
that.
it.
Yeah.
So I'll toss that to you and then I'll share my thoughts.
Yeah. So first and foremost, whoever you are, you're running a story because what did you say? Cold calls rarely work out for me, right? So you've already gave yourself an expected outcome. So, hey, guess what? Keep thinking that. That's where that relationship is going. Uh, so, how do you switch that up? First, I think it starts by thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe this is the time when this cold call is exactly what's needs to happen. And first, like, who? This isn't a business transaction. Why are you calling it a cold call? Like,
Yeah.
just like that's something that I'm noticing for myself. Like, just the language in which you're treating it is unique. Okay, it's not good. It's not bad. It's unique. Um. So, like, okay, if it's happened organic and that's been your experience too, what happened in those relationships that can be applied in connecting with this person?
Hmm.
Like, conversation, every conversation that we start, every friendship that we start is a cold call. Like, nobody's for the most part, we're not coming in hot when we meet strangers, okay? Um,
I am, but that but
well, that's a
that's a
different kind
whole
of
other
coming in hot.
conversation. No, and what I mean by that is there are ways to not have it be a cold
Okay.
connection, especially in person. That goes to that like art of communicating the warmth from across the room. But
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It is a cold call in a sense that we don't already have a relationship with this person. We don't. And that's why we're connecting with them.
And that's the hardest thing about all this, right? I talk about two core things that have to happen for connection to start happening. Number one, you got to reach out.
Hmm.
All the people that have coached with me, they're like, my voice is playing in their head on a loop.
Yep.
And you have to risk rejection. Every friend you've ever made, you put yourself at risk to make that friend.
Yeah.
Did
So
they all
maybe,
work out? No.
right. So maybe this one just feels a little bit different because it's on Facebook. Maybe when we're used to meeting people, it's more in person or whatever. And maybe that's what's giving the illusion of it feeling like a cold call.
Well,
Um,
and so the other interesting thing is the talk about hesitation. Because hesitation, like that comes up for a reason.
mm,
And it's teaching us something. Um, like it could be saying, hey, let's pause for a second because this is an important, like I notice this as an important opportunity. And it's saying, okay, let's pause and let's actually look at this a little bit differently before we start our normal pattern,
hmm.
because this is an important uh, relationship, or it feels to be an important relationship to me. So I think that hesitation is important.
It's very important because and that's where doing the work comes into play because then you're able to hear, is that hesitation, is that pause fear, or is there actual
Yeah.
danger here? That brings us back to how I
I
was talking about my safety and how my bubble of safety is like so big to where we'll be driving in the car and my husband is like getting relatively close to the car in front of us.
oh
And I'm
gosh.
like, I'm going to need you to be three vehicles, you know, three vehicles. That's my bubble of safety. It's big. But because of that, and I know that about myself, I have to be very clear in, is that voice panic, anxiety, fear, or is this a real threat
Yeah.
to my safety? So is that hesitancy, is that a fear of rejection that's stopping you in your tracks? Or are you already knowing, I haven't done like I haven't done the warming of the connection yet, that like coming in hot thing. This is a little bit like I need to kind of tread lightly and just be aware, you know? So I wanted you to share first on this because I knew it was going to be different than what I see. And that's what I mean, that's what I love about talking with you. You see things that I don't see.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to talk to someone who's always on the same page as you, because then you're just like, oh yeah, we know everything, blah blah blah. We sit here and we're like, we know nothing and we know different things, and together we might know something. That's really all it is.
Yes.
um but so you shared that everything is a cold call, and that maybe this is just a story that this person is telling themselves about it already not working, which is a possibility for sure. um, what I saw too was a recognizing of patterns. So there was a recognizing of like, just reaching out typically doesn't work when it's a cold call. So that's a clue to me. Like, okay, maybe you have a pattern of just putting yourself out there, but it's not with intention of recognizing like the situation. Have I warmed up this connection? Were we like, so the person said I met this person at a wedding. So was it maybe not actually a cold call? Did you have a previous conversation?
Yeah.
Who reached out to who on Facebook? Was the friend request accepted? So these are all things that warm the connection. But maybe it's that story of just blindly reaching out to anyone. Maybe that's the pattern that we're shifting here. And we're looking at, okay, who is this person? Whatever, right? So that was something. And then the person said, all lasting friendships seem to happen organically. They're not planned or forced. And I think that that almost sounds like one of the myths about sex too, that like it's not great if it's planned because then it like takes away the whole spontaneity of it. But in reality, for most people, there is a bit of planning that's going on, especially if like you have kids, you've got like things going on, you're wanting to have safe sex, maybe you have a disability that you have to work around. So there is planning that's happening. Society just tells us that the best sex is spontaneous and like ba ba ba. That's what we see on TV. That's what we see on TV when it comes to forming friendships and dating. The stars just align and then you meet that person. That's how that works. You don't do the hard part of getting rejected. So
I
that's a story.
I saw on TikTok, I saw a guy made a video about how growing up in the 90s ruined him. And it was because of shows like Saved by the Bell, Boy Meets World. And he's like, yeah, so I just thought there's going to be this cool place to hang out. Then my principal is showing up at my house, hanging out. And it's like, yeah, TV just has us having all these unbelievable stories because they want us to be entertained, and like all this requires so much communication. Like you want to be good at this, talk about what's happening, like
Mhm.
talk about the experience of what you're going through. And like that's what's because what if the person you want to be your partner, what if you're in a relationship and you never actually talk about what you want? Like you're thinking, oh, it's going to be spontaneous. And what if that person hates surprises?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that definitely could have been, uh, you could have hedged against that bet a little bit, but if you don't talk about it, you don't know.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the people that did submit these questions, because if you don't talk about it, you won't know. And I think a lot of us are going around feeling like we're supposed to know. We're supposed to know this. I'm X age. I am supposed to know this. I have been married for X amount of years. I'm supposed to know this. All of the different stories that we tell ourselves of what we are supposed to know. But if we share, then we
What
realize we don't know anything.
what if we just went on dates and the whole date it was like, hey, here, I want to talk about the things I don't know today, okay?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't know about this. I don't know about this. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to pretend to know because pretending gets us into trouble.
Yeah. Ooh, yes. And that's a big one for dating. So one way of even just of approaching this is to analyze, like, okay, how is this maybe a warm connection already? Did we talk at all? If we didn't, we could talk about how we wish we talked at the wedding. Like, oh, I noticed this, this, and that. We've got common ground here of having been at the same place. What was your experience while you were there? What was your favorite part? You know, there's, or one of my favorite go-tos is just owning the awkward. My favorite connections with people are people who come at me with, literally don't know what to say to you, but I'm saying hello and we're just going to go from there. Like, perfect. Because that's where we're all at, you know?
Well, and I think there's been a huge lie that there's something wrong with just saying hello.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I had to come up with this perfect line.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so dumb. Like, it's just so dumb. Just say hello
Yeah.
and say, hey, I really like your black shirt. I don't
Yeah.
well, there's probably other things I could like, but that's what I see right now. I really like your black shirt, or you have some sweet shoes on,
Right.
or I noticed this. I just wanted to let you know XYZ, or hey, I just wanted to say, hope you have a great day.
Yeah. And that actually was very much so part of the method to my madness when I decided I'm putting myself out there in the dating realm. I wouldn't go up to people in the hopes that it would become something. I would go up to people in the hopes of brightening their day and then me feeling good about it because it felt good to connect. And who wouldn't want to to have that type of a connection? Like, hey, just letting you know, whatever you put together for this ensemble today, fantastic, keep doing it. Walk away, like that's all.
Yeah.
So if we practice that, it becomes easier and easier. It's just like lifting weights. I'm starting with the little 2-pounder where I'm sprinkling little compliments along. That's it. Then maybe I'm going to up my weight and actually start having conversation. But
Yeah.
that's the way to go, is just doing it and starting with action.
Yeah. It always comes down to just do it. Like ultimately, I actually hate that saying though. I
Yeah.
actually hate just do it. I think Nike did us a disservice there. Nike and Yoda did us a disservice when they talked about just doing it. And like, I think there is value in trying.
Yeah.
That so trying is a form of doing,
Hmm.
but it seems a little bit more palatable to me than
Yeah.
just saying I'm going to do it and that's all there is to it. And I know there's people that believe the exact opposite of that, but I'm the guy that says dream small, play big, repeat.
Yeah.
So try seems like the appropriate first step to me. And
Mhm.
ultimately, what's the goal? The goal is try without having some outcome already planned out.
Yeah.
Just see what happens.
I would even put like a little footnote to that and say try, especially without having the bad outcome already planned out. Like if you want to visualize the good outcome, that would be a lot more beneficial than having the bad outcome and fear of the bad outcome already planned out. Like the fear of they're going to think I'm too much, so we're not going to be able to have this relationship. This goes back to that person who shared their question about having some deadly allergies. The person's not going to that I want to share this with is it's going to be too much for them. It's going to scare them away. Maybe that's the fear. Um, the person talking about the wedding and reaching out to someone on Facebook, maybe the fear is that the person won't respond, or they'll be like, this is a cold call. Why is this person reaching out? We just fear judgment. We fear that we're right, you know?
That's so interesting. I love that that's where we ended up because we always want to be right and yet we fear that we're right.
Yeah.
So how does that actually work out?
Hmm.
Like the whole thing, the being too much, the fact that maybe the story is I have this disability so nobody will date me. Maybe that's the story. The more you tell your story, the more your brain is working to prove it right. So, what story are you telling?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are a meaning making machine. And if you want a different meaning, you better start rewriting the story. And it starts with trying. And one of my favorite questions right now is, what do I actually know to be true about this situation?
Mm. And that's a hard one if you really believe the negative um, thoughts that might be there. And maybe there's an element of truth to them. So then what?
Well, then you got you got a long road to go, and you should talk to somebody. Like in reality, you should talk to somebody so they can be like, "Well, no, actually, that's not true."
Mm-hmm.
What what we know that's true is right now you are feeling this way. That is a truth.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? Even our feelings are choices.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes about feelings is that feelings aren't facts. And just because we're feeling it doesn't mean that it's 100% the end all be all. So we have to really look at our feelings. Why are we thinking that? Why are we choosing that? Why are we feeling it? And the best way to do that is to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So right now you're listening to us, and we are always open in the DMs to have conversations to at least give perspective on what we think, and we do appreciate you guys for submitting questions.
Mm-hmm.
Without you, like it would just be us talking. We love having questions to go off of because we know that it's important to you, and it will lead to further discussion. But we've enjoyed our time together today.
As always,
Yeah. So if somebody's new, Michelle, where can they find you?
you can find me on Instagram. Slide into my DMs. It is not a cold call because you are in our community, and I think that that's how connection starts. So let's make it happen. I'm reaching out. This is my reach out. Come on in.
I was gonna start singing, but I stopped myself. Um, yeah. So you guys can find me at the real Nathan Todd on Instagram, and if you have any questions, slide into those DMs, ask away, and we'll be happy to talk about it. And with that, if you enjoyed this, if there was something that kind of sparked your interest, make sure and share it with your friends, with the people that you care about, so we continue to have further and further conversation. And remember, it's time to stop swiping and start connecting.
Love it.